These are 31 Minecraft facts that you maybe missed. And hey, the YouTube King tells me it's impossible to subscribe to the channel before this arrow hits me. So if you want to prove them wrong, then shoot for that subscribe button down below. It's free and it helps out a ton. With the Wind Charge Potion, we're able to make it so that when you kill a mob, it gives off a burst of air. And so, taking that to its logical extreme, what Twisty Master did here is when you give a Wind Charge Potion to a whole bunch of chickens in a 2x2 like this, then by using Sweeping Edge, we're able to use all of those chicken sacrifices to launch ourselves up to 2,000 blocks in the sky. But forget energy cramming, Wind Charge cramming is definitely the new strat. I mean, if you don't have any qualms about killing this many chickens anyway, it might be worth it. During the initial snapshots for the crafter, Mojang had originally made it so that this block had no cooldown when being powered, which might not sound like a big deal, but you only have to look at this example from the Technical Minecraft subreddit to see that it was quickly overpowered. I mean, with a fast enough clock, you could quite literally make yourself a shower of these things. And while I admit that would have been awesome for compacting stuff in our iron farms, it was not what Mojang was intending for the block. And so in snapshot 23W46A, they would then change it to have the same delay as dispensers. With just a Riptide Trident and a mace, you have all that you need to do the most damage in a single attack in Minecraft. Simply take your Riptide 3 Trident, launch up into the stars, and then with your Elytra wings on your back, you're able to turn all that speed into a whole lot of damage on that Warden. Which, to put that in perspective, the Warden has 500 health in the game. But just like that, we're able to turn all of our fall damage into damage on that Warden's head, and best yet, take none of it ourselves. It's just a shame we don't have this much flying room inside of the ancient cities. I've unfortunately found that out firsthand. With the recent scale attribute command, we're able to change our size to as small as 0.0625 times what it was. And with that, this user had the great idea of making a mini parkour course that we could do at our small scale. And now, what used to be simple jumps and gaps for us when we were regular sized, become almost impossible feats at this small scale. And being able to run through things like gaps and stairs is particularly funny to me. Or having to land a Neo jump while you're basically landing into half a block's worth of space. I don't think I could land one of those jumps if you gave me all the space in the world. But for an idea in a new parkour map, I think this is just asking to get used. And even better is that we could also scale ourselves up the other way. Make an entire giant parkour course where you're jumping from skyscrapers. Both of them will be great to see. With the help of commands, it's possible to make fully functional armadillo soccer in Minecraft. All we gotta use is a command so that the armadillo is permanently stayed rolled up. And then at that point, when you run into it like this, as user stably shows off on Reddit, we can sure enough play soccer right in the game itself. And honestly, this puts in perspective just how far we're able to bend it like Beckham with one of these things. And if you're wondering what commands to do for this, then the original user also has that for us in a handy comment that you can see on screen. And also down in the comments, it's worth mentioning this great quote: "He scoots, he scores." Yeah, I didn't know where else that was gonna fit in the video, I just had to say it once I read it. With the Armored Paws update for Minecraft, we got 8 new variants to our different wolves. And each of those wolf variants has a different real-world counterpart. Like the striped wolf being based off the striped hyena, which, okay, apparently the technical name for it is hyena, which is just great. The spotted wolf is based off the African wild dog. The forest wolf is referenced from the golden jackal. The rusty fox comes from the dhole. Chestnut wolves are based off the crab-eating fox. Snowy wolves are unsurprisingly based off of Arctic wolves. Ashen wolves are based off the northwestern ones. The black wolf is based off the melanistic gray wolf. And our original pale wolf that we had for so long, that's just based off a gray wolf. And shout out to Artem on Twitter for piecing that all together. Because honestly, it's so surprising to me that they used so many different counterparts that weren't wolves in the first place. I guess they were kind of limited when you couldn't tame foxes the same way that we tame wolves. But I'm glad they used wild animals instead of more domesticated breeds like I've seen in other resource packs. Those are great, but I think this is better for Minecraft. And with all those different wolf variants, it's got some of the community asking just how many different combinations of wolves can we tame? And while that question was posed to originally be 55,296 by Stevenin, it was down in the comments that other users pointed out that you actually have to factor in that there's 9 different wolf variants, 16 different dye colors for collars, over 5.7 million armor colors, 4 visible durability stages for that wolf armor to be broken, and then double the number of variants by having the wolf be upside down or right side up, whether it's named Dinnerbone or not, and that would get you to 6,581,880,576 wolves. But then when you factor in just how many different tail stages there are for the wolves depending on where their health's at, that takes us all the way over 59 billion different wolf variants. So I wouldn't expect anyone to go out and tame them all for that. It's hard enough just to get the whole pack advancement, let alone do all of this. Armadillos are one of the many recent cute additions that we've gotten to Minecraft. Although while their final texture is cute, the original one might have had a dark secret. Since as you can see, the original armadillo texture when it was shown off had the eyes of the armadillo front-facing instead of on the sides, which, as many in the community have pointed out, would have actually indicated that the armadillos were predators instead of prey. And while it's obviously a lot cuter to have these eyes on the side of their head, when it's also true that the armadillo feasts on spider eyes, I don't know if we can say it's entirely innocent either. Hey, at least it's not our eyes. If you ever watch how things are revealed in Minecraft's trailers, you'll see that in early Minecraft live showcases, they commonly use diamonds and emeralds as a placeholder item for loot tables. And it gets pretty funny when you actually go into the game and see that trial things were actually giving us baked potatoes as rewards. And now, don't get me wrong, we actually do get really good rewards from these things using the ominous bottles, but I just think it's funny how often these obviously rare items are used as just placeholders. I mean, same was true for archaeology. I've never found a diamond with my brush, but if you show off a feature with a wooden hoe, it doesn't exactly get people excited. I get why they do it, is what I'm saying. Cauldrons have never been a particularly useful block. And while I doubt that this makes them any more useful, it is true that if we took an armadillo, it fits perfectly inside of the cauldron's hitbox. And while it might not look like this when it's angled like this as its actual model, turn on hitboxes, and sure enough, you can see it fits really nicely. I mean, at least an armadillo is more useful than the water that we can put inside of one of these things, so if I have to choose, this is how I'm gonna use my cauldrons going forward. With the advent of the trial chambers, Mojang also added in the mob for the breeze. But while these things are pretty annoying, they're not exactly challenging to fight. And as you can see from this example, it's simple enough just to kill one of these using only your fist. I mean, sure, it might run away and protest, but as long as you're able to chase after it, you can just as simply punch one of these to death with nothing else in your hand. And so you can only imagine just how much faster this would go for using something like a sword. But hey, as the comments point out, maybe it was intentional. I mean, it makes the fight a breeze. Sorry. With the addition of the copper bulb, we now have the most compact T flip-flop that we could ever use in Redstone. And what that means is that if we just place a button next to a copper bulb like this with a comparator coming out the back, we can now finally use buttons as a super simple toggle for our doors instead of just temporarily opening it before it closes. And for someone who likes the look of buttons a lot more than levers, I think this is just great. Definitely what I'm going to be using in my next base for sure. When copper bulbs were first given to the community, it was huge news for Redstone engineers. And not because of a new light source, but because this block updated on 1 tick instead of the regular 2-tick system that everything else does. Which means that we can make machines like this one that you can see here, which I've got to say is the most beautiful fireworks display I've ever seen in Minecraft. And honestly, probably in real life too. It's hard to get this level of precision anywhere. And unfortunately, that includes in recent updates, because when the copper bulbs were fully added in, their tick rate was changed to be in line with other Redstone mechanics. So, no longer a single tick, and these crazy Redstone machines only exist in the snapshots. Since the new wind charge item is able to interact with wooden buttons, that means that if we set up an arena like the one that you see here, we can have a dispenser shoot off a wind charge to then activate another dispenser with another wind charge until quickly the results get very crazy, and particularly laggy too. But watching it play out in this example, it's hard to say it isn't funny. It almost looks like there's a video playing out on the copper bulbs with how much it's getting updated. Like I'm part expecting while watching this bad apple's gonna start playing, so maybe it's just Pavlovian. As Crafty Masterman shows off here, with that same ability to trigger redstone with our wind charges, we're able to make a 4x4 piston door that's completely powered by wind charge wireless redstone. Granted, it's gonna be a bit loud and definitely give off a lot of particles, but to see this be possible is just so cool. But being able to have the full system retract and extend using exclusively wind charges and dispensers, that's the kind of ingenuity I always love to see from Minecraft. It feels like every Minecraft update we seem to get a new MLG save, whether it be powdered snow buckets in 1.17, the warped vines in 1.16, and now our wind charges in 1.21. Since if you were to time an input with a wind charge right at your feet before you hit the ground, that little burst of air will completely negate all fall damage that you were taking to that point. It resets your fall, and you're gonna be completely fine. Which, considering you're able to use these in all dimensions, not just the overworld in the end, I think that's also pretty cool too. Now that we've seen what happens when a bunch of mobs are wind charged, there's a different question to answer. What happens if there's a bunch of wind charges? And user Asto8 has the answer for us. Since by using a repeating command block to summon in a bunch of wind charges with no direction above this command block, then as soon as we merge it so that they actually have a direction with this command here, the combined force of all of those wind charges will shoot us right up out of render distance. So I hope you have an elytra, otherwise this would have just been Team Rocket blasting off again. By enchanting your mace with the wind charge enchantment, then all it takes is giving yourself an elytra, and we're able to put together some really cool elytra flight courses. And this example here of using iron golems that are precariously on top of iron bars is particularly funny to me. But hey, they take barely any knockback if that, so they'll be there for multiple attempts on the course. And I think partnering this with some kind of command block system which gives you a point if you go through the rings, you can quickly see where a bunch of creators are gonna go about and make this into mini-games. And honestly, I can't wait to see it. During the snapshot testing phase for both the wind charges and the wind charge enchantment for the mace, there existed this particularly overpowered double use, which is that if you fired off a wind charge like this and then hit it with your mace, you'd be able to launch yourselves up even higher off the momentum of that. I mean, in this example, they're doing it from the base of a stony peak mountain all the way up into the snow-covered tops. And unfortunately, this is no longer the case, since now you need to fall from a greater height to be able to activate the Windburst enchantment instead of just doing it from standing still. Still cool to see in the snapshots though. Minecraft's crafter originally used to look like this, and it's here in this concept sheet that you can really clearly see that they intended it to be a face, with the eyes glowing when powered, and then the mouth spitting out the item when it needs to. And honestly, I just think this is a really interesting look in how Mojang designs things. I would love if they released a whole book of this stuff. And really, it makes me disappointed that the final version of the crafter doesn't look as much like a robot as this one does. I think it's a really funny design. It's a shame they didn't go into it as hard as they did here. The first time that Mojang ever showcased the heavy core or the breeze rod items was actually in a game over screenshot. Yeah, weirdly enough, Mojang showed off this very strange picture of a game over screen, and amongst those items, you can see a heavy core and the breeze rod if you zoom in. It is a weird, unceremonious way to reveal something that eventually became the ingredients for making the mace, one of the biggest features of the game. In my opinion, the Bog is one of the coolest looking mobs that's been added to Minecraft, but I wouldn't have had that same opinion if this original design for the Bog got added in, since here we can see that the Bog originally didn't hold anything in its hands, but more specifically noticeable is just how it doesn't have a face. Yeah, it's literally just a mossy head, but it also doesn't look particularly good. And while it's fun to make fun of this, I should note that this is originally a texture without the overlay. But even with or without the overlay, this isn't ultimately what they decided on, and they went a different direction. And I'm glad they did, honestly. Giants in Minecraft have not worked in a very long time, and that's intentional. They were left in the code, but they were intentionally given no AI. But now with the scale attribute command, we're able to take a zombie and then scale it up to giant size, and it'll have AI. You can even use the attribute commands to change its speed, its health, basically making your own boss mob inside of your world. I just wouldn't recommend doing like this user and giving it speed of a scale 3. Something about a giant zombie freaking out at the top of a ravine is horrifying in any update. I'm glad Mojang never added in this version of the giant. The new trial chambers seem like a giant thing to explore when you're inside of them, but how big do they look on the outside? Well, as you can see from this user, we actually got an answer for that. And by using command blocks to clear out this cubic area, we can see the actual scope of what we got going on here. And I thought the trial ruins from the last update are already bigger than we thought. So looking at this here, it's pretty spectacular, and I can only imagine the excitement of running into one of these while you're branch mining. I mean, at the very least, you're not gonna have to go look for more copper. With the new potion effects that we're able to brew, one of the most interesting ones is the potion of oozing, which means that when you kill a mob, it'll summon a slime where it dies. And then by using a piercing and multi-shot crossbow, we can constantly reuse that one oozing arrow, giving us potentially infinite slimes without ever needing to find a slime chunk. And speaking as someone who always hated having to use another mod like Mini HUD or putting it into chunk base, I like this solution a lot more. And hey, it also gives me a use for the crossbow, which I've never particularly given any mind to up until now. Learning how to use the crafters is a bit of a tough sell, because to have things fill into it with a hopper, you have to know that they fill in a certain order, which makes it a lot harder if you want to craft something automatically with a shaped recipe. But here's one for you to memorize. By placing a hopper facing into a crafter, and then whatever container you want on top, we're first going to put in our 3 milk buckets, 1 sugar, 1 egg, followed by another sugar, and finally 3 wheat, which when we then press our button, we'll have in fact given ourselves a cake. It's almost like memorizing a phone number. But if you want a new party trick, this could be a fun one to do instead of note blocks. With the help of our crafters, bartering farms just got so much stronger, since now we're able to incorporate this into multiple parts of the process and use our piglins to basically make us all of the items that you can see on this handy sheet. And credit to user Billy K for laying all this out. I think particularly having the ability to make automatic Eyes of Ender, take our iron nuggets and craft it into iron ingots and then iron blocks, and perhaps my favorite, which is crafting all of our quartz into the different variants that we want it to be. It'll get even easier to grab all the resources out of this farm, though perhaps worse, you're really gonna need an item sorter after the end of this. The price we pay for having a lot of items, I guess. Back in the snapshots, we were still able to use our mace's Windburst enchantment from standing. We could use an armor stand like this example to launch ourselves up multiple times, and then chain that right into a kill for PvP. And while the mace is still clearly useful for PvP even without this feature, it's a shame that armor stands are not nearly as much. I would have loved to still see this as an option, but I get why Mojang nerfed it. Old Minecraft players remember when this item was originally called a rose, instead of the poppies that we're familiar with today. And while those have been out of the game for years at this point, they've actually just been added in, and in an unlikely area. Since now, with this painting from one of the new 20 that was added, you can see in fact, this is a rose and not a poppy. And that's not the only thing that was forgotten and eventually added back in, since there's also a pack PNG painting that you can see too, which I love. It's a great way to get it back in without just confusing more players if it got changed again. Good stuff. Perhaps the scariest of the new features in Minecraft, and I will have to give a warning here, is when you use the scale attribute command to make spiders down to the regular size of actual spiders. And considering they move just as fast when you scale them down, this really is a horrifying sight. I'm not even someone with arachnophobia, and this makes me unsettled. It's funny, I would have always thought that a giant spider would be scarier than smaller ones, and I suppose in real life that would be true, but seeing just how many can fit inside of a small area like this, and most specifically how high they can jump, I really wouldn't want to set this scale command unless I was making a horror map. And while we're able to use our mace to one-shot the warden, that's not technically true for all mobs. Yes, there is a mob that's stronger than the warden. As Forceivit showed off on Twitter, with the way that Wolf Armor works, if we were to launch up and do that same amount of damage to our wolf, the Wolf Armor instead tanks all of the damage before it cracks. Meaning our wolf basically has a totem of undying. So is it stronger than the warden? Not necessarily. I wouldn't count us as stronger than the warden because we can hold a totem of undying, but it also doesn't die to this in one shot, and that alone is pretty special. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?